UCLA looks like the only team left for Nico Iamaleava.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, and thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest and wildest sport on planet Earth. Jadyn Ott is an Oklahoma Sooner. That's big news. And portal buzz all around the SEC. All on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So, Zach Anderson Yoxheimer of Locked On UCLA, who's here with me on today's show, looks like UCLA is the only place left for Nico to go. He's sitting out there. The portal officially opens today. It's already been crazy with a number of guys that have been jumping in the last several days and finding new homes and all that sort of stuff. But here's where it started. It started with, well, USC, UCLA maybe, or could Notre Dame be an option? Like, this all got talked about. And then North Carolina was in the fold. Yet North Carolina said, no, we're not doing that. And then Tulane was in the fold, and Tulane said, no, yeah, okay, we're not doing that. And the reports from On3 have been places are waiting for him to soften his NIL offer. And he just left because Tennessee wouldn't give him more. I've said from the beginning, when these rumors started last week, it would be a massive mistake to leave Tennessee. Is he going to wind up at UCLA?
The problem with this whole situation is UCLA is looking for a quarterback this year because his younger brother decommitted. Madden, if you're not aware of the situation, if you're listening, watching, his younger brother was the commit for this class for UCLA. He was the guy. UCLA didn't have a true plan after Ethan Garbers. All right, they have a bunch of leftovers from the Chip Kelly regime. Deshaun Foster is looking for his OC. They found that, and they're looking for a quarterback. They don't really have that in the program. They went after Joey Aguilar in the portal with the 10th year rule, right, of the NCAA and JUCO, 30-year quarterbacks or whatever. And then, okay, Nico's available, but they've already negotiated with his brass, with his dad, with his agents, and Madden already turned them down with a receiver, and they went to Arkansas. So going with Nico would just be a weird pivot in a direction. Now, the youth of Nico, you mix in, okay, this is intrigue. There's no guarantee that as a soon-to-be redshirt sophomore, right, he's going to stay there for multiple years. He's not going to ask for an increase in money again. Why would they go after this? I don't think this would be a good option. Obviously, it'd probably be an upgraded quarterback, right? That's not a ridiculous thing to say. But the problem is, why would they pay so much more money for this when UCLA, I think, is fine living with Joey Aguilar for a year and recruiting some of the best uncommitted guys in SoCal for 26 and living with this season? That's, I think, a decent philosophy rather than dealing with this headache, which they've already been swindled with in this recruiting cycle.
So the reported offer he's seeking is $4 million per year. $2 million, not enough, right? Is there a number that Nico would have to come down to where UCLA would consider it? Like, here's where I think this is such a strange fit. I get he's from there, and there is a connection, whether or not it's a good one. It doesn't really seem like it's a great one. But there's at least a connection, some familiarity there between the family and the program. But where I don't think UCLA makes any sense, Zach, is he was just playing on a team in the playoff that would have been contending for a playoff spot again. And you and I both know UCLA is not ready to go be a playoff contender.
Not on the offensive line either.
No, they're not a Nico away from going and contend. And so while UCLA has gotten the most buzz, and it feels like in the game of musical chairs, if the Tulane and North Carolina seats have already been taken, then guess what? UCLA might be the only one left, but it feels like that one's going to get pulled out from underneath him because I don't know that this is even a football fit. Like, this has been for the last couple of days as this has gone on and he remains uncommitted. This has been the default option. Well, he probably winds up at UCLA. And I'm like, wait. You tell me UCLA is going to pay $4 million for a guy who they can't just win with right away? They're at least 1, if not 2 years away from being just a good team in the Big Ten. Like, that's the other part of this that I think is going overlooked.
The problem with this whole thing is, like, Madden and his brass decommitted from UCLA in November? They didn't even visit Arkansas before they flipped to Arkansas. I believe I read that. His father mentioned to 24/7 Sports. They just went to Arkansas and said, we're going to commit. They never visited. That's a guy who just left the SoCal area and is going to Arkansas with 2 recruits because UCLA had Madden and his tandem high school receiver Jace Brown together. You bring in Nico now, and you're like, UCLA's not going to get that much better, as you mentioned, Spencer. There's no reason to think, okay, you get him now, he's your future quarterback. He could have a good year and leave and go get money elsewhere after a year. It could be the same game each offseason where it's just like, okay, UCLA is looking to make some gains, whether they're marginal or year-to-year gains with Deshaun Foster. This would make no sense. His three pillars are discipline, respect, enthusiasm. I don't think this situation would go with any of those pillars. And you're just like, what would this do for the fan base? I know you can make many jokes about the fan base, but I mean, this would be entertaining. From an entertainment standpoint, I love it. From an actual fit, this makes no sense. In UCLA, I've been confused. Why are they in on this guy? They just got burned by his brother, 2 different players. His brother is better, Nico, that is. But there's no reason this would make any sense in any world for any side.
So then Nico is left. If what you and I are putting together gets put together by, everyone in the UCLA football program and the donors and the athletic department, they all realize this is not the direction that, makes any sense for us right now. I mean, where does Nico end up? Could he just not? It's too early to suggest that he could wind up not finding a team. I just don't know that you can rule that out because of the NIL demand. If that doesn't come down, which high-end bidder? And remember, he can't go to the SEC because he's a spring transfer. You can't go to the SEC. That's a rule they have in the conference. I mean, he's from SoCal. San Diego State going to pony up $4 million to bring him over to the Aztecs and what they're building down there with a second-year head coach? I legitimately don't know where he's going to end up.
The funny thing it would be if this turns into a whole prodigal son moment, he lowers his deal, he goes back to Tennessee, says forgive me, and says, all right, welcome me back. That would be so funny. But
I don't think you can rule that out.
That's the only that seems like logical at this moment. I don't see why UCLA should go after this. And there's no reason USC, no logical school would be like, you just burn them. He should go back, ask for literal forgiveness and say, hey, I will actually take less money for being, or, for the whole situation being a mistake and a PR scare. And that seems more logical than UCLA in this point.
It kind of does. It really does, the more I think about it. But again, does that fit what Lincoln Riley's trying to do, which is kind of a soft reset of the program? Does he want to bring in that big of a name, that much noise and attention? Maybe he does. Maybe he does. USC, I think, as much as anyone that could be interested, would have the money at least, more than a Tulane or
There's no reason for USC. There's no reason for USC to spend the money. There's no reason for UCLA to
I don't think they need to.
There's no reason UCLA should get anywhere close to those demands. Entertainment-wise, I love it. I just know it goes.
This could be the wildest week-long saga if he just winds up going back to Tennessee. Syracuse is another team I've seen get thrown out there. Tune into tomorrow's show, everybody, because that will be discussed in earnest with Jackson Holzer of Locked On Syracuse, because that option kind of seems like the best one available. But does Syracuse football NIL have $4 million to throw at a quarterback who didn't even hit 20 touchdowns through the air and was under 200 yards passing several times?
I like to see the Carrier Dome filled.
Yeah, they filled it up last year with a veteran quarterback who hadn't worked elsewhere. Okay, I just have to let those thoughts marinate for a while, and we'll revisit tomorrow. Zach Anderson, Yoxheimer, Locked On UCLA. Great as always. Oklahoma just picked up a big-time commit. First, this episode brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Plus, if you want to bet college football, guess what? You can do that. It's all over there. You have got win totals, you've got conference title odds, national championship odds. You have got everything that you could possibly want. There's a bunch of great information, and if you think you know how things are going down in college football come the 2025 season this fall, you can go put your money where your mouth is over with FanDuel. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com. Claim your $250 in bonus bets today. FanDuel.com for up to $250 in bonus bets. Check them out at FanDuel.com. Big news out of the transfer portal. Jadyn Ott is going from Cal to Norman, Oklahoma. Two places that I have been to personally. And let me tell you, they're very different. They're also different in their football aspirations, Jay Smith of Locked On Sooners, because Cal and Stanford, and we'll talk about the Stanford player Oklahoma added as well, are just trying to fight and get up to the middle and get out of the... Oklahoma's trying to win a national championship. That conversation hasn't been around Jadyn Ott's football career so far. He goes to a place now where I don't have national title expectations for the Sooners, but this raises the potential for them to get to the college football playoff with an incredibly difficult schedule.
Yeah, it's a legitimate conversation now. Like, you can't now discount Oklahoma whatsoever when it comes to any type of national discourse around potentially making the playoffs or even making a push for national championship. Think about it this way, Spencer. Oklahoma picked up one of the top quarterbacks in the transfer portal, and then they picked up one of the top running backs literally a day within him getting into the portal.
I don't know that there's a running back that's moved or gone in the portal who's better than Jadyn Ott. I don't know who it is.
I don't think you can find anybody either. I mean, he had over 2,100 yards in his first 2 years of college football, finished with about 2,500. He had an injury-plagued season last year, dealt with an ankle injury after the first game, and just wasn't the same. But I'll tell you this, out of all the games he played, which I think was like 10 of them, he only had less than 10 carries in one game. So he played his butt off regardless of the injury he was dealing with. Oklahoma now gets him at a better health and one of the more dynamic. So think about it this way. Oklahoma probably has one of the most dynamic backfields in college football right now with John Mateer, with Jadyn Ott, and they still got Xavier Robinson back there, who we watched start to slowly emerge as a potential top back when he just destroyed Alabama single-handedly.
So that's something that I would like hearing if I were just a generic Jadyn Ott fan, which I'll be honest, I am. I've covered him here on my show since he committed to Cal back in 2022. He had a lot of other offers coming out of high school because he's a really talented guy. But I argued earlier this week on the show, Jay, Georgia was a great fit for him because they have Nate Frazier, who I think is going to pop onto the scene this year if Georgia can schematically and offensive line-wise figure out their run game. But I like that pairing because Ott does have an injury history. When he's healthy and productive, he is an incredibly dynamic, do-it-all, pass catch, screen, block, between the tackles, outside big runs, like has the whole package. But when you have an injury history at running back and you're going into the SEC, I would like for you to not be an Ashton Genty level workhorse. It seems, based on what you said, that's not what Oklahoma is going to require him to do.
Not at all. I can see Ott being your main bell cow. The good thing for him is the fact that this is his last year in college football. We're past the COVID multi-year players nowadays.
They're still
outside
out there.
of that. Some still exist.
They're still out
there.
there.
But Ott is not on that list.
No, he's not.
Right? So he's played all 4 years he's been in college. So in this situation, he's in his last year. Now he has the opportunity to truly pop off. And because Oklahoma is still kind of in flux, we're dealing with injuries with Javonte Barnes. Gavin Sawchuk was dealing with injuries last season. Xavier Robinson came down late. Taylor Tatum had some fumbling issues in which I think he's starting to work on that and getting better at. You don't really have anybody that has grasped that role. Ott now is that number one back. But as you mentioned, we still got 2 or 3 backs that can actually rotate in there that we've seen actually put up numbers against really good competition. If Gavin Sawchuk is healthy, you've got yourself another speed back to go with them. Xavier Robinson looks good. You got yourself a power back to go with the way that Ott plays. Javonte Barnes, if his foot gets better, he can go out there because he plays and runs so hard. He'll get you some yards. So the rotation is not going to be so heavy on Ott to where he has to do all the work by himself. He's got himself a stable of backs that have proven that they can play in the SEC when they are healthy. Now we just got to show the health. And then you got John Mateer, who rushed for 800 yards last season. So talk to me. Who wouldn't want a backfield like that when you have a quarterback that's mobile as well as really good at throwing, along with a few running backs that have shown that they can play in the SEC?
Well, the other thing that I like about this addition with regards to Mateer is now he doesn't have to run as much. Last year at Washington State, the Cougars in their last couple of years under Jake Dickert struggled to develop a running game. I think part of that was personnel based and part of that was scheme based. You put those two things together where you didn't have a bunch of elite offensive linemen. You had solid but not elite running backs, and you were running an air raid system. Yeah, you're not going to run the ball at an incredibly high clip the way a Boise State did, the way a Notre Dame did last year, for instance, or Penn State as well. Ohio State could run the ball really well. Like, they just weren't in that sort of mold. And so I think there was a necessity element to Mateer running so much. I don't want in the SEC where you like this is a significant level up for John Mateer, and it's the biggest question really with regards to him succeeding in Oklahoma. Can he adapt to the SEC? Part of that is he going to be able to stay on the field? And I know that question got asked to Jayden Daniels. He went to LSU and thrived, ran for over 1,000 yards. Okay, that's best case scenario. However, Washington State was playing a Mountain West adjacent schedule last year. Jayden Daniels played in the latter years of the Pac-12, and it was RIP really good. It was really, really good. But I like having multiple options back there because I think for Ben Arbuckle at OC, he can now be. He has the ability to showcase that he's a more balanced offensive coordinator, and it's not just a throwing the football sort of guy, that he can coordinate an entire offense.
Let's be fair here, too, for Washington State. With John Mateer, of course, him running for 800 yards feels like he was the leading rusher for the team. But right behind him was Wayshawn Parker at 735 yards. But the thing was that he was a true freshman. So you had a true freshman trying to take the load on top of a quarterback who's been in the system for 2 years. So you're 100% right. You want to show some balance, but that's the good thing about bringing in an Ott with this running back room. We've seen what Xavier Robinson can do. So we know that he legitimately can go out there. He can probably be your bell cow because he's built for an SEC. He's built at 6'1", probably 235 pounds now. So he's built to be the big back that can run in the SEC. Ott comes in because of his skill set. He's now going to be able to dance, and the offensive line, it just got better too. So you just picked up a Jake McCullough, the offensive lineman. He was a center as well as left guard for Stanford. And so for Oklahoma, the big thing for them was health on the offensive line and health at wide receiver were the detriment to the team last season. We went through 11 different offensive configurations in 12 games. And it was mainly because, actually 12 and 13, it was mainly because of a lot of injuries that happened just at random times. Some of your key veterans all went down, so you played a bunch of young dudes who, quite frankly, was just trying to figure out how to play the game. The worst thing you could do to yourself is to start a bunch of young players in the SEC and think that that's going to work very well. Well, the good thing for Oklahoma is most of those veterans are back healthy, but now you have a year of experience with the guys behind them who understand how to be ready for this. They all put on weight. All the offensive linemen but one is over 300 pounds, and they all still have the agility you need to survive in the SEC. So we saw them push around Alabama because you saw they got better as the season progressed. That is what we're expecting out of them now. They've progressed. They're going to continue to progress. But Jake McCullough gives you an experienced offensive lineman, a center in the interior, because Troy Everett is that dude. He has shown that he can play. The minute he got back, he played every single game for the rest of the season for the Sooners, which is critical. McCullough comes in. He'll probably immediately be his backup. And when Troy Everett leaves next season, he's literally your starting center. He's built specifically to be that dude at that point. So now Oklahoma's not only adding experience on the line, someone that has over 900 snaps, but they're adding continuity, which is critical if you want to survive in the SEC and continue to thrive. That, to me, is probably the biggest component out of McCullough coming in. And then adding Jadyn Ott, who he's going to come in. He's going to be your running back this season. But then next season, you can hand that bad boy off to Xavier Robinson, as well as a Torrey Blaylock, who's right behind him as a true freshman. You can move on to your next backs and keep the party going.
Let it be known that Oklahoma is just driving a stake through the heart of what college football used to be. I like Jay Smith of Locked On Sooners anyway, but Oklahoma's in the SEC, and they're pulling their biggest transfer additions from Stanford, Cal, and Washington State. Oh, the poor Pac-12. R.I.P. They said the Pac-12 couldn't compete with the SEC. Oklahoma feels differently now. They feel very, very differently now. I do not feel differently about what Lane Kiffin just did. Ole Miss brought in a transfer portal quarterback. I wasn't thinking about that coming into the portal cycle. Then I kept thinking about it and realized, oh, well, actually, I think that makes a good deal amount of sense. So this is not, based on what I have been told, an indictment of Austin Simmons. That's still my expectation, that Ole Miss rolls out Austin Simmons as their starting quarterback. Former blue chip quarterback recruit who's been with the team while Jackson Dart has been the starting quarterback. Simmons kind of the natural handoff. And still, Ole Miss has gone out and added Ferris State transfer quarterback Trinidad Chambliss. Okay, let me start with two things I could not love more about this guy. First of all, his stats last year at Division II Ferris State. Brownie points if you can tell me which state of these United States. They're 50, by the way. Just 50. And yeah, if you can tell me which state that's in, yeah, bonus points for you. I know the answer because I looked it up before I did the segment. But so last year, he threw for almost 3,000 yards, 2,925 to be exact, 2,925. Threw for 26 touchdowns. He also ran for 25 touchdowns and just over 1,000 yards. So the dual threat component is alive and well. And you know what? Lane Kiffin has not ever been shy about having a quarterback that can move a little bit. Doesn't need to, but you take someone that just had a freakishly good statistical season and you bring him in to be a depth piece to, maybe push Austin Simmons a little bit, but if you're still committed to him as the guy, but this is your backup, the stats are fun. Secondly, can I just tell you his name again? There is no way, there's just no way that a quarterback whose name is Trinidad Chambliss is going to do anything but bring immaculate vibes and maybe some high-end quarterback play as well. I can't think of a time where a Division II, this is not FCS, this is different. There's Division I, that's what we all think of with the Power 4 and the G5. There's Division I FCS, that's your Montana State and the Big Sky, your North Dakota State, the Missouri Valley, all that sort of stuff. Then there's Division II and Division III. I can't think of a time, I don't know of one, in which a Division II quarterback has wound up becoming a starter in the SEC. If someone wants to fill me in, you go ahead and do so because I'd be interested to learn about it. But I don't think that's really a thing. And so that makes this all the more intriguing. But Trinidad Chambliss, who threw for over 2,900 yards and ran for over 1,000, that should be all you possibly need to hear. So if you were surprised, wait, Ole Miss added a quarterback? Wait, what about Austin Simmons? No, nothing about Austin Simmons. This is a depth piece. This is maybe some upside one day, but in no way, shape, or form do I expect there to suddenly be a massive quarterback controversy. I think Ole Miss is still going to ride forward with Simmons. So that was the first piece of news I want to talk about in the SEC because there's plenty of portal buzz. Nothing between schools, of course, because there's a rule against that in the spring window. But next guy's Emmet Mosely the fifth. So this is a wide receiver who goes from Stanford over to Texas. So the last time that a wide receiver went from a former Pac-12 school, RIP, of the OG variety, and went over to Texas, it was Silas Bolden. And was he the best player on Texas? No. Was he a contributor? Yeah. Do I expect Mosely to be? Absolutely. Because this is a guy who had over 500 yards receiving in a Stanford offense last year that wanted to throw the ball a lot, couldn't do it consistently. But when they had success, it was either going generally to Alec Iomanner, who's going off to the NFL draft, or Emmet Mosely the fifth. He's not super big. He's not super small. He's not super fast. He's not super slow. This is just an incredibly solid piece. I think Texas's wide receiver room is going to be propelled by Ryan Wingo. I think that's the next great Texas wideout that Steve Sarkisian has coached in the last couple of years. You think of Xavier Worthy. You think of Matthew Golden this last year, who transferred in from Houston. Isaiah Bond had a really good year coming in from Alabama. The wide receiver position has been loaded. I think this is a really, really nice depth piece to ensure in a year where they have a lot of turnover in that wide receiver room, to ensure that they are going to still have a bunch of reliable pieces that just have to fit into the way Sark calls plays, which is really creatively and really, really just smartly. And look, it doesn't all. We'll see how it looks with Arch Manning, and it doesn't always live up to the hype in our heads. But overall, I think the way that he has used different receiver pieces in his offense over the years makes him one of the best offensive coordinators in the country. And of course, he got the Texas job because he was deemed the best coordinator in all of college football, winning a national championship with Alabama. So I like Mosely a lot. Tremendous footwork. Route running, solid. But I'm just saying, if you throw him a contested catch or he has to make a spectacular one, his highlight reel is chock full of them because that's something he's incredibly capable of doing. His footwork near the sideline, his jump ball and contested catch ability is something that I really like. You can also just throw him the ball on a quick screen. He's someone who I think is good after the catch. He's an incredibly well-rounded receiver. He's not a one-trick pony. Like Xavier Worthy was a great college receiver. He was incredibly fast, and that's what you knew about him, right? You want to get him the ball on end arounds. You want him taking deep shots, running the deep post. Like, he was not a one-trick pony necessarily, but he had something that was identifiable about him that made you go, that's what you're going to lean into. That's what makes him special. With Emmet Mosely V, again, I don't expect him to be Texas's leading receiver. I expect him to be a contributor because I think he can do a number of different things. At 6 feet tall, you can put him on the outside, not the tallest guy in the world. You could put him in the slot. He's quick enough to work there. You could get him involved in gadget plays. You could throw him the ball down the field. I think this is a really just nice, kind of sneaky, under the radar, solid addition for Texas to make sure their receiving core is where it needs to be for Arch Manning, because that guy's got all the potential in the world. And for those of you that missed my show the other day, he is the only quarterback in the class of 2023 of the top 8 guys who's at the school he committed to coming out of high school. He's the only one. And we're finally going to get to see Arch Manning at Texas. It might be too crazy for college football to handle, for some fans to handle perhaps. However, it is going to be quite the spectacle. Either way, I don't think there's going to be a down the middle, he's doing fine. I think he either crushes it or comes up way short of expectations. I lean towards the first one because he's been waiting for a couple years, knows the system, and he's got a bunch of good targets around him once again. So, last SEC piece of portal news to know for today, Braden Joyner went into the transfer portal. Offensive lineman on the interior leaving Auburn, 2024 SEC All-Freshman team selection. I'm sure Auburn's got some other guys. I'd imagine he's one of the more highly regarded offensive line transfers out there right now. There are some other ones. Joe Cotton, the transfer tackle from South Dakota. They actually had 2 other guys on their offensive line transfer, and South Dakota went to the FCS semifinals a year ago. I don't know if they're all SEC caliber per se. Cotton had his offensive line coach go to Vanderbilt. Maybe he winds up over there. But the number of guys that have gone into the portal in the trenches that have a proven track record like Joyner does, I mean, it's not a huge number. Like, how many other SEC all-freshman offensive linemen are out there in the transfer portal? I don't know that there is another one. And I also thought about what this could mean for Auburn. And, like I said, they've recruited really well over the last couple of years. So they should have some solid talent. And Joyner doesn't blow you away with his Pro Football Focus grade. I think there is still some room to grow in there. But Auburn's just an interesting team to me because it should be more than it is. It should be better. They and Florida are kind of the same. They've recruited too well. Their talent level is too high to be as middling with the results as they have been in the last couple of years. And it's not a coincidence that their coaches are on the hot seat. I don't think that move increases the temperature underneath Hugh Freeze's rear end. I just noticed and went, boy, that's a pretty solid guy to have in the portal who's got 3 years of eligibility left and some real upside. So that's your SEC portal buzz for the day. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.